You're listening to the Black Eagles podcast with Sinan and Kan Bayazit.
Ahmet Dursun Sergen aldı. Sergen Bülent yan yana. Sergen Bülent. Sergen. Orada Tümer var. Tümer'e doğru atışını kaybetti. Tümer topu aldı. Sergen aldı. Gol! Gol! Gol! Sergen attı. Sergen attı. Şampiyonluk geldi. Sergen attı. Şampiyonluk geldi.
İbrahim'in pası. Roma. Şimdi Ahmet. İkinci gole gidiyor Beşiktaş. Ahmet.
Welcome back, everybody. Episode 64 of the Black Eagles podcast. I am your host, Sinan live from New York City. And with me today is something unique, something special. We have a special co-host, a special guest co-host, Evran Akman, everybody. And you've probably heard him before. For loyal listeners out there, you've heard him on one of our hashtag After the Beat. But so Evran, welcome to the show.
What up?
How you doing?
I'm alright, just ready to talk about Beşiktaş.
Yeah, it's time. Quickly, before we do that, since you didn't really get a chance to do this previously, say a word or two about yourself. How long have you been following the team? What are you doing? I didn't say where you are. Tell us that first, I guess. Where the hell are you on planet Earth?
I'm in northern New York at my college. I'm a student.
Yeah.
I've been watching Beşiktaş since I think the first game I ever watched was the 4-4 Antalya game. That's like 06, I think. But I really started watching consistently around 2012. And since then I've been watching almost every single game. I play, I ref, kind of really into the game overall, and Beşiktaş is my main passion.
Not only do you play, you're being somewhat modest, you play for your team in Division III college ball here. And for anyone who doesn't know about how things work here, that's he's like one scout away from maybe a Division I school or thereabouts. Who knows? One good season, but sadly, and this probably is worth mentioning. Poor Mr. Akman over here has suffered an ACL tear, so he's been sidelined for 6 to 8 months, I'd say.
Yep.
But so you're going to be returning back when in the summer?
Late August. Hopefully it'll be my return to the actual pitch. But training can start earlier than that.
And it's like the positive spin on it is it's a tale of like the modern marvel of medicine. When I was a kid, for example, and I'm 37 now. I'm admitting this to the world, so when I was Evran's age, an ACL tear was the end of it. That was pretty much you could guarantee that if you returned, it was going to be not a very triumphant return. Yeah. And in just the 15 years or whatever it has been, amazingly, it's really it's not the case any longer.
I think
really come back.
Tolga Arslan and Atunç tore their ACLs in the past couple seasons for us.
Yeah, and maybe
turned.
We're not living in the past here. Let's talk about Alpay Çelebi.
Oh yeah, true.
Very soon to return, and I would imagine might get some playing time. I don't want to get into any analysis yet, but things are pretty wacky on the back line these days, so who knows? In fact, that's a good segue. Let me talk a little bit today about this match while we're here, which is why everyone is here, I would imagine. And so, we don't like to spoil things in case people didn't watch the match, Evran. So I'm going to do the whole build-up. Beşiktaş was at home this weekend for a second consecutive week, hosting Göztepe from Izmir.
Göztepe kümeye, Göztepe kümeye, Göztepe kümeye, Göztepe kümeye.
Vodafone Park was, I don't think it was quite a capacity crowd, but not bad. And they ended up being, in the first half, they were pretty piss poor, if I'm going to be honest. But the second half, they really, and you'll hear in today's stadium sounds, courtesy of Emre Hasturk. Thank you very much, Emre, again, as always. But yeah, Emre's sounds, I think, clearly show that in the second half, the volume of the crowd came out. They really started getting behind the team, which, given especially last week, probably made the players feel a lot better. No booing of Karius, even despite the news midweek that he'd reported the team to FIFA for not being paid for 4 months. And crazy times, crazy times in Beşiktaş on the European side of Istanbul there. But anyway, not to be sidetracked, this match against Göztepe featured an interesting lineup. In fact, in a lot of ways, it's the lineup that Khan and I have been advocating for, barring, of course, one major oversight. But on the back line, we had some interesting times there. So, let me get into the lineup. Loris Karius was in the goal, which in and of itself is interesting, bearing in mind again that he had just reported the team to FIFA. But then also we had Domagoj Vida alongside Gary Medel and Gökhan Gönül and Adriano on the flanks, which no surprises to begin with, except maybe for Gary Medel playing. Enzo Rocco apparently not being rewarded for his, fairly positive
Cameo, right?
Cameo, yeah, exactly. After his nice little feature against Kayseri 2 weeks ago, didn't show up last week somehow, and then once again was passed over for Gary Medel, who's not been particularly successful on the back line or anywhere this season. But I'll talk about that later. That might be my point to mention, I guess. Every week, Khan and I like to have one main point of analysis that we want to bring up. And so I actually want to talk about Gary Medel and how things sort of shaped out for him in this match. But anyway, in the midfield, we had Dorukhan Tokuz and Atiba Hutchinson again and this was the nice little twist. Shinji Kagawa up front in the number 10 slot with Adem Ljajic on the left side and Ricardo Quaresma on the right with Burak Yilmaz up front. I was going to say Khan. Evran, do you have any comments about the lineup?
I felt like it was probably just about the strongest lineup we could put out, player per player. I think, maybe if a couple more players, like Ozan, for example, is at his top form, maybe he would make that in. But the way he's been playing recently, I think Dorukhan Atiba was our strongest midfield, and most people might disagree, but I think Quaresma was one of our best players. So I think having him out there was with Kagawa and Ljajic was pretty good in theory, at least.
This is a point that one should note. Evran is in fact a very big Quaresma fan, and I'm actually happy that you're on the show to represent that. The fact that still exists. I think he's come under a lot of fire for some time. But Khan and I have said on numerous occasions that I think history will look very kindly on Quaresma. he will go down as a club legend. And so it's important for folks to remember out there that there are still people who love Quaresma. You know, he's not really the forgotten man that some people would like to make him out to be. But anyway, I think you're right. All of what you said is correct. Dorukhan, I think it'd be hard to take him out of the lineup at this point, given how well he's been playing. In a lot of ways, he's been the engine for so long that it's almost risky taking him out in some ways. But let's just kick right into it. So the match starts cagey. I think you could say it was competitive, but everyone, no one wanted to make that first mistake that led to an opening. People were very hesitant. I thought it was. I'll be quite honest. One person said that it was the worst half they've seen. That's ridiculous. Aurelian. That's ridiculous. Only given the second half against Fener, which you reminded me of, Evran. But it was one of the most difficult halves of the season to watch. It was very boring, and I say most difficult in that it was like laborious. That bad half against Fener wasn't difficult to watch because you were glued to the TV, just like, what's going on here. In this case, it was really like I felt like I could have maybe hit the snooze button and slept in for at least the first 30 minutes of that match, and I wouldn't have missed anything, except for one thing.
Beşiktaş sen olmasa yaşamak
In the 12th minute, Adriano went out of the game, injured. Some sort of calf injury. It didn't look too serious, but I think for the sake of caution, given how he's had a pretty injury-plagued season thus far in general, they took him out of the match. And in came, again, not Enzo Rocco.
Yep.
Not Nicolas Isimat-Mirin, who is not in the lineup at all. Supposedly he's injured. I'm still not buying it. I think there's something shady going on left over from the Fener match. But Necip comes into the match. And so what this does is it puts Necip into the middle of the defense alongside Domagoj Vida, and they slide Gary Medel out to the left back spot. Interesting. I said this. So Gary Medel played one match as a left back early in the season, and I think it was in one of those throwaway European games against like Torshavn or something that, you don't tend to look at those matches very seriously because you expect to win, and by a lot anyway. But Gary Medel did play as a fullback, and he played very well. And what I liked in particular, the club has had a track record dating back to Pepe of just launching the ball forward and not very carefully, not keeping the ball on the ground, not building up well so that you can have a more cohesive attack going forward. And the one benefit of Gary Medel on the flank is that he doesn't cross the ball well, and it forces him to keep the ball on the ground. And given the ability of our wings generally to cross well, it's actually, I thought, kind of useful that he was effectively keeping the ball on the ground. And of course, he's pugnacious and defends well, as always. So he's always going to come back and defend well. So, I'm not saying he should be our starting left back by any means, but what I might be suggesting here is that his best position at this stage of his career might be there because, on the back line as a central defender, he's sort of short. There's nothing you can really do about that. He's a little guy. And he can be beaten in the air very easily. And in the back of our midfield, he's been, he's getting up there in age. Maybe he's not keeping up as well as he once could. I don't know quite what it is, but he's definitely been less effective in that role this season. But anyway, I don't know if you have any thoughts on that, Evran.
I'm another guy who it's weird because I like Gary Medel. I think he's one of our better players because unlike some of our other players, he actually he keeps his positional discipline defensively.
Yeah.
Not at all times, but more than other people. When he's in midfield, although he doesn't all have the same qualities that Tiva has, I'm less worried about the counterattack because he's less likely to push forward when we're in possession. And when he's at center back, although he is undersized, I think he's our best ball-playing center back that we have. He's very comfortable on the ball.
Yeah.
I think his best position is probably in a back three, which we see more often in Chile. But for us, I don't think he has the attacking qualities to play as a fullback. And I think on the wings, his pace will get a little bit. He's against someone maybe like Fofana or something, or Bifuma. You could see him get torn apart on the fullback, in my opinion.
Yeah.
But I think he can fill in any position. And I remember in the Leipzig game, this is a while ago, he played right back, and I don't remember being too concerned about his performance.
Yeah, he's a bit of a Swiss Army knife for sure. And, just something to note, I thought, is that, of course, he's not someone you'd want to play on the fullback as a starter there at all. But again, he proved useful, and it's contextual, as you say. You don't want to put him against a guy who could burn past him every time. But in a certain way, he can compensate for his lack of speed with that positional prowess that you were talking about. And so he can kind of he wasn't getting burnt on the wing at all yesterday. Again, that's not so helpful going forward, perhaps. He might be lacking pace in that regard. But anyway, just a little feather in his cap, perhaps, to note that he can still be very useful in that regard, even if he's less useful in other ways going forward as his age advances.
Beşiktaş sen olmasan yaşamak ne yarar? Beşiktaş sen olmasan yaşamak ne yarar?
Anyway, other moments in the first half of note, I think the big event that was actually a non-event, luckily, was a counter by Göztepe that very nearly resulted in a goal, but it was flagged offside, and correctly flagged offside. But Yasin Öztekin rounded our defense fairly easily and got back there, but had received the ball in an offside position. Karius played it pretty poorly, but he seemed to have some knowledge of it being offsides. He was waving his arms around a little. So they scored, but it was taken away. And to little fanfare, even Göztepe didn't complain much. Any comments on that play, Evran?
I think we got very lucky there because if you look at the back four, where was it? I think it was Medel, Necip, Vida at that point. They're all 10 yards ahead of Yasin. So he looks like he's a mile outside. But Gökhan on the far side wasn't really paying attention.
Actually, I think that was Necip. That was Necip who was holding him, I think.
I think it was Gökhan, it was the right back. He stepped up the last second because he realized he was keeping him on, almost keeping him onside, but he did it after the ball was played. So he was only maybe a body's length offside when it looked. All the defenders thought he was a mile offside, and they all stopped playing. So there's a couple times where just the past few games where our defensive line has not been well set. Usually it's Necip who messes it up, which really always gets to me. But this time it was Gökhan.
Yeah, and actually Necip made a very nice diving tackle with the interception / tackle, which was great. But it was also, he had to do it because he was so far out of position. He was in the same part of the field as Domagoj Vida, not in his side of the defense.
He's done that on a couple occasions.
Yeah, but so at least he saved himself. The blush is there, but I actually, on that offsides play, I definitely remember yelling at Necip. I don't know if maybe Gökhan Günal was even closer to it, but definitely Necip was pulling that back line a little too close for comfort, I thought. But anyway, that was the only action of the first half that was, I think, worthy of note. And it didn't result in anything, luckily.
We didn't have any shots.
Zero
first half.
Shots. Yeah. 0 shots.
Except that Quaresma volley off the corner that went 50 feet over the bar.
I guess we should say 0 shots on target. And of course, we'll do our stat flash later on. At the half, Jermaine Lenz came in for Necip Uysal. So Necip came into the match and then came out of the match. And like I said, he later from that point I mentioned earlier, he did make one redeeming tackle, but perhaps Şenol Güneş saw what I did, and recognized that he'd been out of position and was gonna perhaps be a disaster, as he tends to be. But anyway, this was kind of hilarious. During the half, I was going to get myself water, making myself coffee. I missed the initial whistle, and by missing that whistle, I missed the goal. I came back and they were celebrating, and of course I saw the highlight, the replay. But it was a very well, for one brief moment, Beşiktaş was playing tiki-taka, and it did signal a turn of events. The second half was much better in general, but Burak Yılmaz scores on an assist from Ricardo Quaresma.
Beşiktaş'ımızın golü 71 numaralı formasıyla Yılmaz!
Yeah, Ljajic dribbled it upfield, sort of distributed out wide to Quaresma, who crosses it in. Burak Yılmaz with a solid header across the goal. So Quaresma crossed it to the far post, but then Burak heads it back across the keeper into the top of the net. Beautiful goal. And yeah, it really signaled a change in the game. The second half of this match was far more worthy of watching than the first, although it did not produce any more shots on target for Beşiktaş, but we don't need to go into that. In the 60th minute, Nabil Gilas came onto the pitch for Borges. In the 71st minute, Öztürk came on for Deniz Kada, who had been playing aggressively. I was close to putting him on my shit list with Adem Büyük and a number of others. Yasin Öztekin got himself a nasty yellow card in the 79th minute. Borderline. Evran, you seem to, and I know how much you like Quaresma, so I'm going to give you the benefit of the doubt here, because you seem to say that it probably was a yellow card, not a red card. It wasn't a stomp. He may have pulled his foot back.
He definitely stepped on him, but if you compare it to other situations where you step on the guy who's sliding in, usually you see a red card when they leave their foot in, and it wasn't quite as they use in the laws with excessive force. I mean, you could still argue studs up into the shin, so it was definitely like orange, as some people like to say, but a red was a tad harsh. I think if he gave a red, VAR would not have overruled him, but I don't think it was worth saying it was a clear and obvious error.
Yeah, that's a fair take, and I think that's exactly right. By saying orange, what you're really, I think, saying in a way is there are probably 4 out of 10 refs who would call it, maybe 6 out of 10 who wouldn't. You know, it was a borderline call, but not like a grievance, I don't think, for anyone to have. Anyway, in the 84th minute, Ingando came into the match for Poco. In the 90th minute, Ozan Özyakup comes into the match for Shinji Kagawa, who was applauded, I think, fairly heartily. Nice little match from him. In the 5th minute of extra time, Alparslan Öztürk earns himself a yellow card. But that's it. That's how the game would end. 1-0. Beşiktaş. nice little victory. Not by any means an impressive win or a pretty win, but it was one of those ones where if Beşiktaş were in the middle of a charge towards the title, where we're in the thick of things, we would love this win. It would be one of those gritty kind of, these are the ones you have to win. Like, these, they're not always going to be pretty, but you got to get those 3 points, right?
The
but
cliches,
in a way, right, like in a way, because we're so out of it, it left me with a very empty feeling, I'll be honest, because it wasn't really fun to watch. It wasn't really impressive. We got the 3 points, great, and we're still in the hunt. We'll talk about results. We'll talk about results elsewhere in the league to sort of wrap things up and talk about how this result impacts our season. Nothing too exciting to talk about in that regard, though. And just 3 points the hard way, I guess we could say. I'll not even give you the mic yet, Evran. I'll talk about the stats first, and then we'll start going into analysis. All right. So this is the interesting stat, and the maybe least impressive of them all. Shots. Göztepe won the battle there, having 13 shots to Beşiktaş's 6. 5 of them were on target to only 1 by Beşiktaş. So Beşiktaş had 1 shot on target and 1 goal, and they won the match 1-0. So shout out to Loris Karius, who did actually, and I didn't even really notice it much during the match, but there were 2 saves, one in the first half and one in the second, that were fairly impressive. And sure enough, this is exactly the kind of match where we would, I think, historically give up a goal late and be disappointed that we, especially this season, we dropped points again on like their 1 counter. Although again, this time they maybe could have earned that goal more than we did, given the stats. Possession went to Beşiktaş, 65% to their 35. Beşiktaş completed 621 passes to their 317. A very efficient day of passing, 84% for Beşiktaş compared to their 72%. Those numbers again continue to climb and look good ever since Atiba has been reinserted into the lineup. Atiba really does bump up the numbers of our passing accuracy and has, markedly done that this season. Fouls, 20 fouls committed by Beşiktaş to Göztepe's 13. Although 2 yellow cards were given out and only to Göztepe players. So Beşiktaş skirted the line there, committing 20 fouls, but nothing too dirty, I guess. 3 offsides for Beşiktaş to 2 by Göztepe, and Göztepe got 4 corners to Beşiktaş's 3. So, what we can say about this match statistically is that Beşiktaş held the ball for much of the game, but Göztepe was maybe the more dangerous side, and, they played a very effective brand of counterattacking football, evidenced not only by their superior attacking ability and ability to get the ball on goal, but also by the fact that they forced more corner kicks, were getting offsides, they were getting into position. I actually think it's good news that Beşiktaş was offsides 3 times. It's not a good look when you're not offsides at all. It really kind of signals a lack of intent. And there were quite a few games this season where that was the case. Even with Burak early on in his, Burak is famously offsides. So if he's not getting offsides at all, it's almost frightening. You want him to be pushing the line as much as he can. So yeah, it's good that that's actually happening again in a weird way. But yeah, the stats. I'll hand over the mic to you, Evran, before we kind of really dig into this match. What do you think about that match? What do you think about those stats? What are your overall thoughts here?
I think that the possession stats are actually much higher than usual. I think it was in the first half I think we had more than the second half. It was something like 70% at one point, but we really struggled with verticality, especially when Adriano came out. The transition from to between the lines. From the defense to the offense, it was non-existent. I think as the half waned on, they started going back to the old, as some people like to say, Quaresma style, where you just swing it out wide. He tries to do something, but I think we saw that because Atiba, Dorukan, Kagawa, and Yaich was probably not as effective as we expected in that transitional play.
Particularly in the first half. I mean, in the second half,
Particularly in the first half.
the second half, it looked like they were getting more comfortable with each other. Although they're not there yet. Clearly.
I think Göztepe created much more chances because they didn't actually try to build up the play at all. They would just counter when the ball off a mistake or something, then they would bypass, breaking 2 or 3 lines of defense. They would get the ball and it'd be a counterattack. I think one time it was like they had a 4-on-3 counterattack, which didn't actually do anything with. But they had several times where they could have scored, but the ball didn't land properly, or the guy couldn't get the shot off. On another day, if with the rub of the green or a little bit of luck, they probably could have scored 1 or 2 in the first half, maybe 1 or 2 in the second half. Also, I think stats wise, if you look at if you're gonna be nerdy, like expected goals, usually when Beşiktaş loses, I think their expected goals is much higher than the opponent. In this game, it was probably 50-50, if not leaning towards Göztepe, just the amount of chances they're able to create. But in the second half, even though we only had 1 shot on target, there was just a lot of times where we would get the ball into the box and then the final pass would be off. In the last minute.
Or the final touch, they'd get the ball and it would run on.
Burak is through and then he crosses it and Beto intercepts it when he had an open shot or an open pass.
Or Kagawa had a beautiful pass, he kind of looked the other way and
like a bicycle kick, right?
Well, so Kagawa did a little dummy pass to Atiba Hutchinson, and he had that kind of deer in headlights, oh my God, what am I doing? I'm not supposed to be on the attack here. I'm not comfortable here. And he kind of clumsily passed it back to Kagawa, and it was there's a lot of that. There's a lot of that. Yeah, I can't disagree with you at all. I think I actually my maybe slight difference of opinion is that there was enough in the second half of fancy passing between Kagawa and Ljajic and Dorukan, even with his sort of energy in the back behind them, that I definitely want to see more. I definitely, there was some intriguing stuff, as they started to gain some fluency and get some comfort with each other out there, particularly between Ljajic and Kagawa, right before Kagawa had been taken out. But another factor, of course, was Kagawa still coming into form, maybe fatigue becoming a factor a little bit later on. Although somehow that was also when he was performing better. The first half was just miserable. So I mean, interesting. I mean, so what is your take there? Maybe that's a good starting point for us. That would have been a focus for a lot of fans, is that little trio in the midfield. How does Ljajic look on the wing with Kagawa in the middle? Can that work? What's your final take on that first go at it?
Yajic did not work as well on the wing as I would have hoped. I think in the second half, when he moved into that more Ozhan role next to Atiba, we saw a better link-up play between him and Kagawa. I think also in part because Kagawa played better in the second half, maybe. Not sure if it was chicken or egg, what came first. But we definitely both saw them play better in the second half. I don't think Yajic was really involved on the wing.
Yeah, well, in a funny way, I think we kind of, although theoretically we're playing the usual 4 guys back, it looked often like we were playing more of a 3-5-2 or 3-6-1 even. And so it meant that Ljajic was less needed on the wing, I guess, and maybe that's why it started to look a little nicer,
Well, usually we have 2 attacking fullbacks. Either it's Gerakan, and then usually have Caner or Adrian on the left side, who both people like to push up. But this time, since you had Medel there, he's more stay-at-home defender. So Gerakan played much higher, and to compensate, Medel played deeper. So it's still a 4-2-3-1 on paper, but it sort of transitioned into having an extra right mid as Gerakan at the attack.
And so then, it was interesting actually. They were, like I said, it was at least more fun to watch in the first half, which maybe doesn't say much if we're gonna be honest. But I definitely feel like they gave me a little taste of something that we certainly can't give up on it. Probably worth mentioning is that Fikret Orman, it seems as if he's spending the week in Japan, drumming up business. He's spoken very positively about Kagawa and had his desire to keep him with the club. So obviously, if that's the case, and I wonder how it could be financially, in a way, maybe it's good news. Maybe there is a plan that we don't know about to save this club. But yeah, definitely, that's something that's going to have to work for this club long term. And so we can hope that, we can hope that starts to look a little bit better. And yeah, the second half maybe gave people reason to think it's not impossible. You got anything else to say about that?
I mean, I think just to comment on the back to the stats is that Kagawa's stat sheet was very average for this game, but I think if you watched it, there's a lot of little things that he did. Like on the goal, he won that header. There's just a couple passes to Yajic that were like, I think one time he like bicycle kicked it out of the air. Like it was for a through ball. It didn't have any like key passes, any assists, any shots, but his link-up play was.
So let me take a moment. Let me take a moment here to acknowledge our sponsors. No, I'm kidding. We call this segment the hashtag Shinji Watch. This is Shinji Watch time. Yeah, absolutely. Tell me more. Tell me more about Shinji Kagawa. This is where I'll usually play a hip hop beat with a little Japanese tinge to it. Yeah. So I mean, Kagawa. Yes, I think that's a very astute point. That I think if you, in a superficial way, looked at the match, you'd think he wasn't so impactful. But especially in the more dreary parts of the match, he was really the only one who showed anything, right? Could we say that? It wasn't too great from him, but at least he was out there connecting the midfield to the attack a little bit. He was showing.
He has that ideal to go forward. I think in that first half of the Fenerbahce game, it was probably his best half, where he would get the ball even deep in his half, and he always looked to turn out and play it forward instead of just most players in general, a lot of players that we have in midfield, but just pass it back to the center back, or pass it back to the left back, right back, etc. He's one of the more creative players I think that we have, and you could say Yajic is also, but I think Kagawa's at a different level, is where he's more consistent with his forward passes. Yajic tends to hold the ball maybe for an extra half second more, and I think Kagawa is his first touch play, creativity. Sometimes like one pass he did was very deep in our own half, a man on his back, and he chipped it with the inside his foot, like with spin, which was definitely a risky pass over to the defensive mid. So if you lose the ball there, then that's terrible. They're basically bearing down the defense with no midfield. But he has that confidence just through that little link up play. And on the goal, it was not the hardest header to win because it was on his head, even though he's short. But the way he flicked it, he split two defenders. He just does those little things where he sets someone else up to maybe make that the pass, the assist, or the pass. I think when one or two times he did make a good pass to the guy in the box, and then he would lose it. So that doesn't really show up on the stat sheet all the time. This is not necessarily a key pass. It's not necessarily like whatever they call a chance created, but it's breaking a line. If there was a way to statistically show how many times you broke a line, how many times you split defenders, and the efficiency at that, I think Kagawa would be near the top of the list on our team.
I think undoubtedly, yeah, certainly. And from a psychological perspective, you can never undervalue the feeling he gives you as a team, right? He can literally sort of flick a switch and get you from somewhere in the midfield up into the attack in one graceful move. And so, like, no matter how dreary of a match you're having, no matter how hard it seems to get your passes together and to put a cohesive attack in place, Kagawa just gives you that kind of that spark, that inspiration where you feel like anything could kind of happen when he's out there. And that's something. I mean, Ljajic has given us a little bit of that. I don't want to. I know how much Khan loves Adem Ljajic. I don't want to undermine that.
I like him.
He's fantastic. Yeah, he's a great player. But Kagawa gives a little bit more of that kind of impetus to go forward and like where you confidence, even, I guess you could say. But yeah, that's I think that's enough for Shinji Watch. I don't think there wasn't. It was a somewhat uneventful match all around, so it's hard to really highlight anyone specifically here. Do you have any major point that you want to talk about with this match? Anything that kind of ties into the season at large? Or shall we move into, the highlight and the low light of the match?
Quick point out that Dorukhan was actually excellent at center back.
Oh, yeah!
And that he's now officially better than Necip at every position.
Yeah, he's the real Swiss Army knife that we needed, that we thought we all hoped Necip would be for, when Slaven Bilic said he wanted 11 of him. It seems like, Dorukhan is... And so, that's worthy of note. Dorukhan was moved back to the back line when Necip got taken out for Germain Lens. And that totally changed the complexion of the team. In a weird way, it allowed us to play more of that sort of 3-6-1 or whatever the hell that was that we were playing in for much of the second half. Because he was very steady back there, getting back quickly. He has the pace to compensate for maybe poor positioning because he's adjusting to new positions every week. It's interesting. It's very interesting to see him shine wherever he's needed. He really shows, especially considering that we can assume that he's not getting paid like everybody else. Like, he's really going all out. And he's young, of course. You'd expect more of that. He has more to prove than a lot of the other guys. But, still, it's definitely fascinating to see him provide such an engine wherever he's needed to do that. Maybe that could be our segue. Maybe that's even the man you want to highlight here. So what Khan and I like to do is we have our highlight and low light of the match, which is the kind of man of the match and goat stinker of the match. But so for you, would you classify Dorukhan's performance as your highlight today?
I think it was the most surprising because obviously we've seen him in midfield that he does put in good tackles occasionally, but I didn't expect him to be able to slide back in defense and be as solid as he was.
Yeah, that's really an impressive ability. So who would you call our man of the match then, if not him?
It's hard to pick a man of the match because I don't think anyone really blew our minds. I think there was a couple players that were good. Gekhan and Vida are always, I think, are generally our most solid players at the whole season. I think apart from one Vida mistake, they were also solid. I think Quaresma maybe wasn't his greatest performance, but it was better than we've seen in recent weeks. There was a couple hints as a couple times where he would dribble someone that it reminded you of what he used to do back when everyone didn't want him to piss off.
And he did get his 7,457,000 assist of the season, despite not being so impressive. He did assist Barak's goal in his typical fashion, on a very well placed cross. So
overall,
so what are you gonna say, man?
I would have to pick. I would say Vida, just because we kept the clean sheet. He did make one mistake at the end where he mishit it, but overall, there was at no point did he make me nervous other than that time. But I think just throughout the whole season, he deserves some appreciation.
That's a good pick. Yeah, and we've given him a few of these. He really has been a very sturdy presence for the team all year on the back line. Very good, very, very good player. And I think that's a worthy, we had a clean sheet. I think you've got to give everyone on the back line there some credit because it was a really patchwork unit, as always. I don't know what Şenol Güneş is doing. I've called him a psychological terrorist. And what he's done to Isimat Mirin and Enzo Rocco and even Necip, right? I don't like the guy very much as a player. I don't think he's very helpful for us, but I don't think he did anything that would merit him being taken out of a match he was just subbed into.
I believe that they said there was reportedly an injury. There was at no point that I see anything happen to him, but apparently he got injured.
In a way, you hope so, because
so Isimat is also apparently.
Yeah,
injured,
exactly.
So.
Yeah, I've already raised my doubt on that one, but no, Enzo Rocco isn't, and he's actually given us a flash of why he might be worth playing. Not to mention the massive contract he has, and given where we are as a club, if you're paying that much money to someone, you should at least know for sure if they're the one or not. If you're going to keep them around. But in line with what we've been saying, and to, without taking too much time, I think I'm going to go with Durakan with my highlight. Vida, Karius, Medel, everyone back there did exactly what they needed to. So shouts to the whole defense. It's easy to overlook what they do. Especially in a season like this where they're not doing it very consistently. But Şenol Güneş has been shifting guys around and swapping guys in and out for so long that it's actually fairly impressive when these guys can put together a clean sheet. You can't overlook that. And Durakan, that's his first ever game as a central defender, and so he helped keep a clean sheet there in a makeshift line. So good for him. Now, low light. Who was your worst player of the match, Evran? I'll let you go first since I'm a guest speaker here today.
I think probably Lenz really came in and he didn't do really anything positive. I think that was probably one of his worst performances of the season. He committed like 6 fouls. I'm exaggerating, but that's really all he did. He lost the ball a lot. He fouled a lot. He fought hard. He worked hard, which is good. He held back on defense, which I think he usually does. But I think especially when the game was getting a little more stretched, you would have expected him to be able to take some sort of, take the opportunity, as he's one of our faster players and a good dribbler. But I think there was a couple of times where Gassama really made him look pretty stupid. Like one time he tried to dribble him and then Gassama took the ball and then Melnick didn't.
I
hurt my heart. But
I wanted to give Gassama a shout out for much of that match, and then later on in the match he started flopping around and being kind of an impetuous little dick. I'll have to bleep that out, but enough that I was like, I don't even want to give him any shout out anymore. Like, what a jerk. But yeah, I guess for the sake of like journalistic integrity or whatever, it's worth noting he was actually fairly good. But yeah, Lenz didn't really stand out. I don't know if he stood out even enough for me to say he was a low light. I'm gonna stick to my guns and say it was Necip, because I'm sticking to my guns that I think he was nearly.
I don't think he played enough.
Yeah, maybe he didn't play enough ball, but just I don't like when your best standout play of a match is you compensating for terrible positioning and like saving your own hide
on top of the other side.
And like you're in that vital role. Like I want to keep giving it to Necip until he's no longer in the rotation because damn it, like he's just not technically proficient. He's just not very good at his job.
Yeah.
But yeah, okay. I think that's really. I think we've covered this game just about in every way we can. Other news: Loris Karius came out after the match, said he was not very appreciative of Şenol Güneş's comments to the press. He did, however, say that they've spoken since, and I guess maybe cleared the air. You certainly hope so. He put out a very positive tweet and Instagram post after the match, sort of with the X over the goal, I think representing the clean sheet, and then the shushy face emoji, like quiet up, detractors, haters. So good for him. And I actually think it's about time someone says, why does Şenol Güneş have to torpedo me to the press? Like he could surely talk to me in private, which is, I think, the professional thing to do in any sporting scenario. And it never helps, when a guy is getting booed by his fans to then also be hearing stuff like, of course you're going to want to report your team for not paying you. Not only is the man playing and not getting paid for his service, but then he's getting slagged off by the fans. And Lakan and I have long spoken about how, if you're blaming the keeper for Beşiktaş's troubles, then you're a lazy pundit, because there are so many problems that lead up to that last moment where it's between a keeper and an attacker. But yeah, he backed it up with a good performance. He spoke up about how Şenol Güneş could probably be a little bit more professional in that regard, but also seemed to say that it was all water under the bridge and that they were back to being professional and playing football. I don't know how this, what this suggests as far as the rumors of him reporting the club to FIFA. If that is true or not, I'm assuming it is. Of course, you never quite know with the Turkish football press. It did come from Germany.
It was the
It
German
did come from
press,
Germany, but
yeah.
even still, with football journalism in general, it's not like the height of, speaking of journalistic integrity, you really never know.
Yeah.
I think we should probably wait for the final word, but even still, I guess it's a good sign. I mean, he's clearly the most talented keeper on the squad now, and he's
It's not saying much.
not saying much, but he's giving us clean sheets, and he's saving. Like we said, there were probably 2, maybe 3 chances for them to get that equalizer that we've seen be gotten so many times against us. So credit to him for not slipping up and for making the saves that were necessary. Pretty solid back there. Again, despite all the nonsense swirling around. Also, other news: Gökhan Töre reportedly reported the squad. Is complaining.
I think he's the only person who actually, he said it himself. He tweeted it. Karius has not made a comment
Exactly. Yeah.
on the rumors.
But so if anyone wants a real scapegoat or someone to get angry about, Gökhan Töre is out there. Although I personally will never give any grief to a person who's being asked to labor without getting paid. I don't care what your feelings are about Beşiktaş and how you've got to play for the club. Like we've most of us have grown up Beşiktaş fans. These guys are paid professionals who want to get paid to do their job, and they don't have that loyalty and that diehard kind of desire to do right by the badge on your shirt kind of thing that we all have as fans. So for me, the real bad guy here is the club, and we have to say that as fans realistically. Like if your club's not paying their players, they're never on the right side of any debate regarding that. So let's just hope they can get it together. I think Fikret Orman being in Japan, talking about wanting to keep Kagawa with the club, the fact that we signed Burak Yilmaz, who's not a spring chicken, right? It all suggests,
and we paid a fee for him.
Yeah, right. It all suggests that maybe there is some kind of a plan that maybe we don't know about. Maybe there's some source of money on the horizon. Let's just knock on wood, and I don't know what kind of good luck ornaments you have that you need to activate here, but I think it's time for us to hope for the best. Clubs around Turkey are reporting losses. I know Fener has specifically said they needed to have a negative 30 loss, meaning I think a plus 30 gain or something. I don't know, but they have in fact lost 90 million. The bulk of it being this year with the economy and all that. Credit to coach for being transparent. I don't think Aziz Yildirim would ever have done that in the past. But I think Beşiktaş has also reported massive losses. So I don't know. I mean, maybe UEFA can look at the economic situation and recognize the hardship that it is to be in any sort of enterprise as a Turk these days, I suppose, and make money with the economy being as crazy as it's been. But I doubt they're going to be lenient, especially with Turkish clubs, given our past misdeeds.
I think the only saving grace is the transfer flows are better than they used to be.
Yeah.
That's really bad across the board, and I think Beşiktaş is a little bit better than the other big 3 teams that we have. I think it's a plus 15 million, maybe I'm exaggerating, but we have sold a lot more than we bought this past 2 or 3 years.
Man, we sold Togay Arslan to Fenerbahce. We should get an award for that, honestly. Are you kidding me? He has been, maybe that's a good point to leave things on. He's been the same sort of vacant presence for Fener as he always had been for Beşiktaş. He has not changed the fortunes of the club. So we can all pat ourselves on the back for that, at the very least. Evran, tell people how they can follow you on Twitter, so you can start to become, you can get the heat for your comments if there are any.
Yeah, I got a burn. I don't have a personal account, so it's @fanofbjk. So I made this way back in the day. So It's not
just
personal.
one word, no dashes or spaces.
No dashes. Yeah, just fan of BJK. I think that's the @ and then the title is BJK fan, and my profile picture is Quaresma. So
Yeah, naturally.
still my priorities are Beşiktaş and Quaresma.
In Quaresma. And so, yeah, I mean, Evran's a lot younger than I am. But yeah, it's again, I think maybe this is where we leave it. Evran has grown up a Beşiktaş fan with Quaresma as this talismanic figure, the star who's come and gone and come back and actually achieved fairly positive things with the club. So, yeah, it's interesting to have someone who's kind of come of age with Quaresma as a kind of club legend, and it's so important, I think, for older fans, especially like us, like me and Khan, who maybe can be a little hard on Quaresma at times. Just to recognize.
I think he remembers the Sergen Champions League runs, but I was like 3 or 4 years old.
It's funny.
Or 5, whatever. How old I was. So obviously I don't remember those.
Yeah, I mean, Khan definitely also.
So I don't have that same feeling.
Khan definitely has the sort of rose-colored glasses, as he says when he talks about Sergen. And like, I'll be 100% honest, I hadn't quite come of age yet as a Beşiktaş fan to see too much of that era, and I saw a little. But like, I actually remember a lot of the negatives, like the attitude problems and the training ground spats and stuff like that. So, everyone has their own guy. I'll be honest, I don't even really know who my all-time favorite is. It might be İlhan Mansız. That was kind of my coming-of-age player, maybe. But anyway, everyone, thank you guys for tuning in as always. It's a pleasure to host. A great pleasure to have our guest Evran come on today and talk about Beşiktaş with us. To stand in for Khan, who's you can definitely catch him on Football a la Turca, which will come out late Monday or Tuesday, I think. I don't know their schedule exactly. But yeah. That's about it for us this week. Follow me on Twitter at Sir_Writes_a_lot. You can follow this podcast at Eagles_podcast. You can follow Beşiktaş International, the mothership, at Beşiktaş_INT for all the latest, all the news that comes in around the clock. We've got a team of goons from all over the place, tweeting everything that comes out as it comes out. Even on the American clock, it comes out late night there. So we got Evran, actually, he's one of the guys tweeting. Yep. So yeah, follow us as always. Tell your friends, family, the guy who makes your morning sandwich, your personal droid units, everyone about the sensation that is the Black Eagles podcast. And that's about all I have to say, except we might have a little break. I don't know if Khan has anything scheduled in terms of some little theme episodes that we can do in the meanwhile in these coming weeks. But there's a little bit of a break in things for Turkish football in general, and the next match is not until April 7th. They've not officially announced game times for that. I mean, it is 3 weeks away. Beşiktaş will be on the road against Rizespor, a very hot Rize, who's up and coming again. So yeah, stay tuned for that. But so there's a break upcoming, 3 weeks.
Turkey will be playing.
We'll probably do something in the meanwhile. I don't know exactly what. Evran, actually, quickly, do you want to tell me about the table a little bit and results that have come in this week?
Yeah, so on the top 4, Beşiktaş, Galatasaray and Trabzon all won their games, but the main surprise was that Başakşehir squeaked out a tie with a 90+7 penalty. So this was one of the first times they dropped points in a while. They only have 2 losses all season. So we're now 11 points behind Başakşehir. Last week we were 13, and then we are still 5 points behind Gala and 4 points ahead of Trabzon for the European spots.
Yeah.
So not everything, but there's still stuff to play for.
And on the flip side of things, in the relegation zone, Erzurumspor managed a point. Göztepe slid into the relegation zone with their loss against us. Bursaspor did not widen the gap there by losing to Galatasaray. So they're actually only a point above Göztepe for that last relegation spot. Ankaragücü is then the next team above them, tied with Fener actually, with their on 31 points. But so Fener and Ankaragücü are actually putting a little space between them and the others, maybe keeping themselves out of the relegation zone for good. We'll see. Stay tuned. And yeah, as always, perpetually is the case. Go Beşiktaş! All right. Cool, man. I think we're good.
I don't think so.
What are they saying?
They're playing the offside lines. They're drawn on.
That is kind of bullshit, though. Look at that. Artists.
Beşiktaş International hopes you enjoyed this program.